Hello, welcome, welcome. I think we're live. And I'm hoping that the sound is working. And so I'm just checking. Yes, fantastic. Okay, I'm going to turn this off. Welcome along to our lunch and learn. Hopefully, you can see the slide and you can see my face. And I am going to spend the next 30 minutes just talking you through some little stress hacks and some stress busters to help get us through the festive season. So, if you want to drop a comment, I should be able to see them. So, I'm just going to write hello in the chat. Lovely. So, pop in any questions here. And we're going to get going, basically. So, finding peace amidst the chaos of the festive season. That is what we are here to talk about. So, if I. Just start to flicker through these slides. Basically, I was just going to take a couple of seconds to introduce myself. So I'm Harriet. If we haven't met at Westside Wellbeing event yet, I work for a company called Coaches for Change, and we are here to make a positive difference to people's lives and help people make positive changes, whether that be individual or whether that be based in your workplace or your organization. So we do that through wellbeing coaching, yoga, fitness, health, one-to-one coaching. These are all the kinds of the tools that we can use. And I suppose just a tiny little bit on my background, I have a degree in geography from Oxford University. I spent a career in marketing and advertising agencies, worked for some of the biggest ones kind of globally. And now I have a master's in positive psychology and coaching psychology. And I sort of define my career at the moment as one that has been pursuing understanding people. So whether that being from a marketing perspective or whether it now be more from a sort of overtly psychological perspective, that's where my passion lies. So what I'm going to share with you today is all backed in science. It all comes from a positive psychology perspective. And if you want any information, if you want to have any of the resources and references to the research that I'm going to talk about, then absolutely give me a shout and I can send those through to you. And yeah, if it is possible, you've got any questions, drop them in the chat. If you're watching this afterwards, you can always send me an email. My email will be on the slide right at the end. And yeah, I'd love to have a chat, have a debate, see how we might be able to help you. So, all right, it's a little clunky way to flick through the slides, but today, over the next half an hour, and I will keep just checking my watch, and we'll probably run until about 25 to. We are going to cover understanding stress, some research-backed stress reducers, and then how that all contributes to having more longer-term resilience. So that's what we're going to cover. And just a couple of stats before we get going. So when we talk about stress, I think people have quite a keen understanding of what stress feels like. A survey that YouGov did in 2018 found that 74% of people have been in stress situations to the point where they felt overwhelmed or unable to cope. And then when they drilled down into that, actually 79% of those were work-based situations. So we already know that work can be stressful, but it seems to be heightened at Christmas and over the festive period because we've got extra things, extra pressures, extra workload potentially, extra socializing, and then extra home life pressures as well. So particularly around Christmas, another survey done the year after found that 35% of men have felt particularly stressed over Christmas, and over 50% of women have felt stressed around Christmas. So we know that there's a particular pinch point. And if you've managed to find the time to watch this, then well done. You're doing really well. And I guess we can take comfort from the fact that it is a stressful time and we're not alone through that. So when we think about stress then, In terms of definitions, I'm not going to drop in loads of the sort of psychological definitions, but effectively there's a perception that either an external or an internal pressure is too much for us to be able to cope with. And that, in essence, is what we're talking about when we talk about stress. And what's interesting about that is that it doesn't always have to come from someone else. It could be the internal pressures that we're putting on ourselves. However, stress isn't always bad. So here are just a few examples of good stress, and I'm sure that you have some examples of your own, and you can drop those into the comments if you want to. But stress is a good thing for us as human beings. Stress helps us achieve fantastic things. So whether that be academic or whether it be physical, whether it be putting ourselves in stressful situations to learn a new hobby. There's loads of ways that we embrace stress. Sometimes we call it a challenge rather than stress. And it's actually kind of fundamental to how we operate as human beings. What's happening in the body when this good stress is happening? And we call it, from a psychological perspective, we call it eustress. So these are just some of the things that are happening within the body. And it's a fantastic automatic response that is signaled by the amygdala, and that is often called the reptilian part of the brain. So it reacts sometimes before we even know consciously what's happening. So you can be preparing for stress before you've even clocked that there's a problem, which is why it's good for like jumping out of the way of a car or things like that. Your system is going to kick in straight away. But to do that, certain things have to happen. We need adrenaline. We need the heartbeat to rise. Blood pressure is going to go up. We need extra oxygen. Our capillaries get bigger. Our blood vessels in the brain get bigger. Our senses become sharper. We might start breathing in through the mouth to get some more oxygen in more quickly. We're going to release sugar and fats into the bloodstream to, again, help us have that energy to make a decision. Are we going to fight or are we going to flight? And then if that threat is continued, cortisol will start to be released. And these are all fantastic things that happen to help keep us safe, alert, being able to respond to stressful situations. And as I said, having good stress experiences are kind of fundamental to our well-being as humans. So there's tons of debate around what well-being means, what happiness means, what contentment means. But this guy is Martin Seligman. He coined the term positive psychology way back in 2000. And his perspective was psychology so far has been focused on what's wrong with people and fixing the thing that's wrong. But if you're looking at a scale of, ill health from a mental well-being point of view to neutral to flourishing, what he's saying is that if you fix the mental health issue, you don't move to flourishing, you move to a neutral midpoint. And he said what psychology isn't very good at doing is taking us from that maybe languishing neutral point to flourishing. So hence why we've now got the science of positive psychology. And as part of that, he came up with a theory on what we need as human beings to have flourishing experiences. And it's called the PERMA model. And it comprises of positive emotions. We need to have things that we feel truly engaged with and have engagement. We need to have positive relationships. We need to have meaning in our lives, and we need to have a sense of achievement. And all of that is underlined by good health. So we can't get away from that advice of, exercise, eat your greens, have plenty of sleep. That is the fundamental. But on top of that, we need positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning, and a sense of achievement. And those all put us into that eustress space. I think it's just important to note that when we're talking about stress, because a lot of the time we thrive on it and it helps us achieve more than we even thought was possible. So you might recognize some of these pictures in terms of bad stress and what stress feels like when it's not good. So again, you might want to drop some comments into the chat, but how you feel when stress feels like too much. You might be tipping towards overwhelm. You might then be knocking at the door of burnout. And we experience things then like hiding our emotions, feeling like it's too much, not wanting to engage, wanting to hide ourselves away. It might translate then into cynicism, lethargy, not wanting to be bothered. It can translate as anger as well. So there's a whole host of negative emotions that can come with stressful situations. And And the interesting thing is, when we think about what's going on in the body, everything's exactly the same. When we move from eustress into distress, all those same things that are happening in the body that we talked about are still happening. Here's the interesting thing. Stress becomes distress when it's chronic, when there's no end point to it. So things then which are good for us to be able to respond in the moment become bad for us. So if you've continuously got glucose and fats being released into the bloodstream, we're more at risk of suffering from diabetes. If you have high alertness in the brain all the time, well, that can actually translate into anxiety issues. If you have cortisol continuously being released, you're likely to have higher blood pressure, and that can have subsequent heart implications. So the problem with stress is when we can't switch it off. And we might not be able to switch off for a number of reasons. So one, it might be because it's out of our control. It might be because we don't have the right skills and resources to deal with it. Or it might be just because we haven't taken the time to acknowledge the stress and we move straight on to the next thing. And that's what's really common. And that's what I wanted to talk about, particularly in the festive season. So there's a concept called the stress response cycle. There's a great book, which I will reference at the end, by the Nagoski sisters, and they talk about the stress response cycle. And I really love it because I just think it really helps people bring to life this concept of closing the stress response cycle, acknowledging stress, closing that down so that you're then ready to move on to the next challenge. So imagine you're back on the savannas of Africa hundreds of thousands of years ago, and you perceive a threat, a stressor, a lion. Your body, all those natural responses that we've talked about are going to kick into play. And when that happens, you then start to make decisions. And let's say you see the lion. On this occasion, you're going to run away from it. You climb up a tree and the lion gets bored and goes off. So you sit up in that tree and you're like, the first thing that you're going to do is go, phew, I escaped the lion. So there's a physical change in your body that you actively promote that happens when the threat, the stressor, has left. And then you're probably likely to go back to your village or community and talk about the stress. So you're going to share details. Where's the threat? Where's the lion? And not only are you sharing that experience, you're reliving that experience, you're processing that experience, but you are also then starting to celebrate, hey, I survived the lion attack. And there might be some pats on the back, there might be some festivities, and there's this acknowledgement that, yes, this stressful thing happened. We've breathed, we've moved, we've engaged with community, and we're moving on from that stress. Now, what we don't do in our daily lives is acknowledge the fact that we live in very stressful times. So it might not be very often that you come across a lion, but even before you've got out of bed, I guarantee that you've started to stack up stressful situations. How many of us check our phone before we get out of bed? So you're already clocking up, okay, there's some emails I have to respond to. Maybe there's some WhatsApp messages that I haven't got back to from someone. Maybe I'm looking at my day thinking, when am I going to get lunch in? The schedule is so busy. So there's all this stuff that's going on that we do even before we get out of bed. So our body is moving into this high alert zone and we're not acknowledging it. We do 100 things daily, even innocuous things like we cross the road, we're weighing up all the threats. Maybe someone sort of swerves out and we have to jump across to the pavement to get out of the way. We never pat ourselves on the back. We never stop to say, hey, you did a great job there, well done. We just move straight on to the next stress. And that is the key with these kind of 5 hacks over the Christmas period, is actually building the time in the day to say and to treat and to acknowledge the stressful situations that we're going through. And like I said, I want to be really clear. I'm not saying that these are all bad stressful situations, just saying it's stress. And there's a biological response that happens in the body due to stress that we have to acknowledge, we have to close off, and then we can move on healthily and not causing long-term damage and not forcing us into this state of overwhelm or lack of hope. So first thing, we're going to go through 5 things that you can do. I'm just checking to see that you guys are still there. So I hope this is working. I hope the sound is working. Do message if there's any problems. just checking all my sources of information. But yeah, so 5 things that we're going to talk about then, these practical things that you can do. The first one is to breathe. I gave you that example there of kind of that that sigh of release. So there's a couple of breathing techniques that I just want to try with you now because they're really easy and they're really quick. The first one, and I just really love this one because it's a really good thing to do if you've got lots of meetings, if you need to sort of just acknowledge that you've been jumping from meeting to meeting or getting your head stuck into something really big and meaty and chunky to do, and then you're going straight on to the next thing. Sitting up in a chair, trying to support your spine, maybe pushing the feet into the floor. All you have to do as you inhale through the nose is squeeze and tense up through the whole body. Curl your toes, squeeze your fists, shrug your shoulders up towards your ears. And as you exhale, we're going to exhale out through the mouth. And we're just going to let everything go. And we're going to do that 2 more times. So have a go now if you haven't already. We inhale, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze everything together as tightly as you possibly can. See if you can engage all of the muscles. And then release and let go. Last time. Inhale, squeeze, 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 squeeze. And then exhale and release. What I love about that one is often we find that I'm releasing my shoulders. I didn't even know that they were tense. I'm releasing my toes. I'm releasing into my thighs, all those places that I tend to carry tension. My jaw is another one. I just suddenly start to release and let go. It's just really forcing everything just to switch off as you exhale. So that's one that I really love. And another one, if you've got just again a little bit of time, you don't need very much time. You can do this just maybe 3 or 4 times. It's an inhale and exhale. We inhale and exhale through the nose. That engages the parasympathetic nervous system. So that's what we're trying to tap into when we close the stress response cycle. And if you think about it, it makes sense because it's the sort of breathing that we wouldn't do if we were being chased by a lion. So the brain goes, there's no threats here. I'm going to do all of that important stuff and processing in the body that is important for us. So it really helps calm us down and relax us. Sitting then in exactly the same way, try and have your feet flat on the floor. You can do it standing up, you can do it sitting down. And this is just inhaling through the nose and then exhaling. But what we're going to do, we're going to inhale, inhale, inhale as much as you can, and then take another little sip of air through the nose, and then exhale it all out for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're going to do that 2 more times. So inhale as much as you possibly can. And then sip another little bit of air in. And then exhale for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lovely. 2 more times. Go on, let's do it 2 more times. Inhale, breathing in, filling up the lungs as much as you possibly can until you can't take in any more. And then just take in a little sip. And then exhale everything out. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lovely. Last time. Inhaling. Inhale another little bit. And then exhale. So there is tons of research to back up the double inhale, longer exhale. You can do it without the double inhale and just do a 4-6 breath. And then there are loads of other breathing exercises. So if you found these interesting, again, give me a shout. I can point you in the direction of loads of other ones that are helpful. And just when you give them a go, just notice how you feel before, notice how you feel afterwards, notice how you're feeling in the shoulders, the face, the neck. And then see if you can start to introduce them into your day. So like I said, for me, particularly when I was working in an office, just taking that time in between meetings just to go, to let everything out, just to sigh, just to breathe. And then if I could just fit in a couple of calming breaths that just set me up for the next meetings, kind of acknowledged, and then help me move on. So that is number 1, and it's free and it's easy and you can do it anywhere. So the second one is all about movement. So moving is one of the most fantastic ways that you can close off the stress response cycle. And also it helps with things like blood pressure. It physically helps you change kind of in the body. It's then going to help you sleep better. And it doesn't have to be a full workout. And again, at this festive time of year, a lot of the routine goes out the window. You just haven't got time to fit everything in, and that is fine. So we're not saying you have to fit in 60-minute workout 5 days a week. No, just find time to move every single day. It can be 10 minutes, not a problem. One of the things that I love to advise people to do is just have some playlists of your favorite songs ready to go on Spotify so that you can play them, have a little dance around the kitchen. Invariably, if you do one, you'll often stay and do 2, 3, 4 more and just have a little boogie. But if it doesn't have to be that, it can be playing with the kids, it can be having a quick walk around the block, whatever it is, try and get some movement into your day. And like I said, it doesn't have to be your normal schedule, full activity. It just has to be a little bit of movement. And you know how it is, like on Christmas Day, maybe you're not moving as much as you would do normally. If you get a chance to go out for a walk, it feels fantastic. So I just would really recommend finding that time. It's going to have the benefit of closing off the stress response cycle. It's going to make you feel less stressed. And with all of this, there's tons of research that backs up the fact that we are more effective, we're more creative, we're more engaged if we take micro breaks away from the activity that we're doing. So you will be better at whatever it is you're trying to do. Wrap presents, go to your 5th Christmas party of the week. You'll always be better and be able to handle those better if you've had the chance to close the stress response cycle and get some movement in. So moving on to number 3, we're talking about nature. At this time of year, it's really hard, and it's really hard because it's dark as well. So it's another thing that contributes to the stress sort of just being a little bit worse at this time of year. So you can do your movement and your nature at the same time. So if you can take 10 minutes to walk around outside, fantastic. If that's not how it's going to work for you, again, I would just encourage you to find the time to embrace nature by getting outside. Again, there's tons of fantastic studies and really fascinating studies that show the impact of having a break and then incorporating nature versus not incorporating nature. And again, people find that you are more creative, it's better for your eyesight, more engaged, lower stress levels if you're able to incorporate some nature as part of your daily routines. So it's a really helpful one to just help lower those stress levels. And I appreciate it does sound like these are more things to add into your day, but let's face it, the breathing exercise, 30 seconds, a minute. If you've got 5 minutes, fantastic. If you've got 30 seconds, fantastic. Do what's going to work for you. If you're moving, even if you are already going to be moving, if you're thinking, oh, hey, I'm moving around here, how can I use this to like just acknowledge some stress that I've been facing? That's going to be better for you. Again, there's some really interesting studies of the sort of almost proxy effect of knowing that what you're doing is good for you versus people doing the same thing, but they don't think it's good for them. And actually it has more impact if we know the thing is good for us. So that's an interesting thing to know. You might not even need to find any more time for that. And then embracing nature, sure, this might be an extra thing to add into your day, but once you know that it's so beneficial for you, it might be easier to say, no, do you know what? I'm not going to sit down for half an hour for my lunch. I'm going to sit down for 20 minutes and then go out for 10 minutes or however that looks for you. So, number 4, this is all about celebrating your successes. So getting to the end of the stress response cycle, there's that moment of, hey, I just completed a fantastic thing. And this works really well in the workspace, but actually it's going to work just as well if you're at home, particularly if you're the sort of person who's got a list as long as your arm of Christmas jobs that you need to get done. So what we are really, really good at, and we have this sort of negative bias hardwired into our brain for those sort of lion situations where we're always learning, we're really good at getting to the end of the day and going, right, I haven't done this, I haven't done this, I haven't done this, I haven't done this, and just immediately creating a list of the stuff that you need to get done the next day and sort of berating yourself for all the things that you didn't get done. So your mission, instead, when you start to hear that being played around in your head, is just to stop for a moment and say, hang on a minute, but what have I got done? So this is just a 30-second reframe that you're doing in your head where you go, hey, actually, I had 20 things on my list. And sure, maybe 18 things still to carry on to the next day, but I've got 2 things that I got done. So that is an improvement, tick. And there will always be things, and maybe there were things that weren't even on the list that you've got done. So please find the things that you have done to celebrate. And there's an exercise called the 3-2-1 exercise, which I absolutely love. And finding a consistent time in your day towards the end of the day to review. So it could be, if it's work-based, it's towards the end of your working time, or if it's based on your kind of sort of whole life, then it might be just before you get into bed, or maybe while you're brushing your teeth in the evening. Take 3 minutes, like I said, just to celebrate your successes. What have you got done today that you hadn't done the day before? Whatever it is, whether it was on the list or not, take 3 minutes to celebrate those things. Then take 2 minutes to say, who helped me? Who helped me with those things? Who am I grateful for? Who can I say thank you to? And again, you can always fire off a text message. You can always fire off an email. You can send your emails on delayed time, so you're not interfering with other people's evenings or out of work time, work hours. But say thank you, be grateful, show gratitude to someone who helped you achieve your successes in that day, even if it's because your partner brought you a cup of tea. You know, it can be that small and simple, or it could be massive and someone's, you know, kind of super helped you out. So take that time to be grateful. And again, we could do a whole session just on gratitude and how important gratitude is for our well-being and for lowering our stress levels. But yeah, so you've got 3 minutes to celebrate your successes, 2 minutes to thank somebody, and then 1 minute just to think ahead. Take a second and go, okay, what's tomorrow going to look like, and what am I going to prioritize getting done? And that's it. The 3, 2, 1. Super simple, super easy, and just a really nice way to just round off the end of the day. So the final one that I was going to mention, and we sort of touched on this a little bit, when we're talking about things that are stressful, things might be stressful because we don't know how to do them, or we feel like we've got a lack of control. And understanding what we're good at helps with both of those two things. So the news flash is we don't have to be amazing at everything. And actually, when we put ourselves under that kind of pressure, that's sometimes where a lot of the stress comes from. There are things that you will be fantastic at that other people don't carry those same skills as. So I really encourage you to take a moment to say, hey, well, I'm really good at these things. And then what you'll notice is then there'll suddenly be some things on your list where you go, oh, I'm not so good at those things. But maybe you know someone who is, or maybe you decide right there then, okay, well, that means I'm going to have to try and get someone else to help me on those things. Because the things that are your strengths are going to be easy for you. They're going to energize you. You'll get them done much quicker. The things that are not are going to take a longer time. They're not going to energize you. They might make you feel a little bit low because it's harder to get those things done, particularly when we're in time pressured situations. So that's obviously not true in all cases. You know, it's great to embrace things that we're not good at and sort of learn new skills. But when you're in these stressful moments, and that's really what we're talking about here, these in the moment stress relievers, is to divide and conquer and just say, hey, do you know what? My list of 20 things, actually 5 of those things I could smash out super quick because they really sit in my wheelhouse. But those other things, I'm going to need someone to help me with 3 of them. I know someone else who can do those 2, and start to use your network and use the quality connections that you've built up, whether it be at work, whether it be home, and don't assume that you have to do everything and take on everything. So we are wrestling through this because we've only got half an hour, and I know everyone's busy. Obviously, that's the theme of the talk. But what we've covered to close your stress response cycle are these 5 things. Find time to breathe. Doesn't have to be very long, but take that moment to breathe. Get some movement into your day, however that looks. And if you move already, just acknowledge that movement is really good for you, and that's going to help break your stress response cycle. Get outside in nature. If you can combine it with the first 2 above, fantastic. Celebrate your successes. Think 3, 2, 1, and then play to your strengths. Celebrate the things that you're good at. Upweight your to-do list with the things that you're fantastic at, and then get help for the things that you're not. So I would encourage you, as we kind of come to a close on the talk, just to take a few moments to have a think about what are the things that you could actively put in place from now. So looking to tomorrow, hopefully you haven't got a stressful day ahead, but if you have, How can you build in some of these things? When are you going to get your movement in? Are you going to get some time outside? Are there some moments where you know it would be helpful to breathe? And what does celebrating your success look like tomorrow? When can you do that? And just remind yourself of those things that you're going to be fantastic at tomorrow. But really the key here is just to start to look at your diary and go, okay, where are these like pinch points? Where are these stressful points coming? And how can I equip myself to deal with them better? Because over the long term, I'm just going to share with you one more concept from a positive psychologist called Fred Luthans. He has come up with a concept of psychological capital. And this is what gives us the resources to deal with stress over the longer term. And he defines psychological capital by having these 4 measurable components: hope, self-efficacy, resilience, and optimism. And if we can start to cultivate these things, it is much less likely that we're going to get stuck in ruts where we feel overwhelmed, that we can't do things, that we can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And let's just remember that if we're not sleeping well, if we're being triggered by all sorts of extra fun things that are actually contributing to your stress, like maybe increased food, increased socializing, increased alcohol, we're not necessarily in our best, most healthy state to be able to kind of deal with stress looking forward. So the more we can have developed our own personal resources, like understanding our own strengths, like having gratitude, like celebrating what we're achieving, like being healthy, increasing our movement, breathing effectively, then we can start to discover our inner hero and keep hope, self-efficacy, resilience, and optimism forefront of our minds. And again, this is a whole other space that we could talk about for a lot longer and do workshops on as well. But these are the things that give us the long-term kind of resilience and support to help us through stressful situations. And this quote just really resonates for me. So it's by Joseph Campbell, who you might have come across. He wrote a book called The Hero's Journey. And he said, we must be willing to let the life we've planned so as to have the life that is waiting for us. And I think that that's just a really important quote. For me in particular, I often get stressed because I'm thinking, I want it to be perfect. I want this to happen. I want this to happen. I want this to happen. Then actually, it doesn't happen the way I planned, and it was tons better. So let's just remind ourselves to not get too hooked up on the details, go with the flow, and allow ourselves to kind of implement the best possible methodologies to combat stress in the moment. So 2 books that I would like to just recommend. So I mentioned the Nagoski book. So this is called Burnout, and that's where they talk about the stress response cycle. Really love it, really recommend it. There's a great audiobook version of that. The Stress Solution by Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, another really good book. I don't know if there's an Audible, I assume there is, but he does do a podcast as well, which I would really recommend. Great to sort of dip in and out of, and really kind of scientific, but highly accessible. So I would recommend those. And I think I just want to conclude by saying, first and foremost, that it's a stressful time of year. So give yourself some slack, be kind, cut yourself some slack. And we are talking about stress that you can manage and that you should be managing and that you have the tools to manage. Now, sometimes we are put in situations that are beyond our control and are just too stressful. So hopefully, by having these tools, you'll have the ability, you'll have a clear awareness of your strengths to be able to put your hand up sometimes and say, hey, actually, do you know what? This isn't right. You know, I have got too much stress here. The stressors are not right for whatever reason. But what you should have now, after this kind of whistle-stop tour, is a handful of tools that you can say, in the moment, I can deal with stress that is thrown my way. And it's going to start to build up my longer-term resources so that I will have much more consistent relationship with stress as we move out of the festive period. So I mentioned that I was going to put up my email address. So this is me, Harriet, at coachesforchange.co.uk. So please, I do encourage you to, I'm going to pop that in the chat as well. I do encourage you to reach out. And if you have any requirements for yourself or for your business, for your organization, please do let us know. If there's anything else you'd like to see on the Lunch and Learns, please do contact either myself or Louisa at Westside Bid. And we really want to make sure that these are as useful for you all as possible. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. Have a fantastic rest of your day and a wonderful weekend and a super duper festive period. Thanks so much. Bye.